Hi, everybody. Um, just a quick video to plug an upcoming podcast episode that I'm going to be posting pretty soon. I'm going to be posting this episode. It's actually a kind of a dual purpose episode. I'm going to be posting the same interview for my Overcoming Chronic Illness podcast as well as for my Optimistic Future podcast. And the person I interviewed is a woman named Laura Adler. She goes by the handle on Instagram, Environmental Toxins Nerd. And she really is an environmental toxins nerd. She talks about environmental toxins like it's going out of style. She's an expert in that area, and I've been following her on social media for quite a while. And I'm excited to talk to her because, I mean, she's a wealth of knowledge, and also because I think it's just a really, really important topic for people to be aware of, for people to think about their environmental toxin exposure. If you were to ask, I think any average person on the street, say, like, do you think it's a good idea to avoid exposure to harmful chemicals? I think everybody would say yes. I think if you ask anybody off the street saying, do you think it's a good idea to minimize the dumping of harmful chemicals into our environment? I think people would say yes. I think everybody would say yes. So it's, very non-partisan, I think non-divisive issue, chemicals bad for us, bad for the environment. And granted, there's a trade-off sometimes. At least in the present day, to run all of our industries and things like that until maybe there's a time where we can switch to entirely clean, entirely green energy sources, all of that, hopefully there's a possibility of that at some point in time. But for the present time, there's a bit of a trade-off. We to run our world at large, there are pollutants that get out there. But in my opinion, I think that there are a number of chemicals that we could avoid in our day-to-day lives if there was just more awareness of the fact that there are these chemicals that many folks out there are voluntarily exposing themselves to, and that if we just knew that there were simple ways to basically avoid those. So this topic, the reason I'm posting it for both of my podcasts is because in my complex chronic illness podcast, Overcoming Chronic Illness, it's generally a very good idea for folks, just in general, but especially if you're dealing with chronic health issues, to minimize your chemical exposure. For the Optimistic Future podcast, it's just raising awareness around, well, these chemicals, if we can avoid them, then that's a good thing. By avoiding them, it's going to send a message to the companies that are manufacturing these things to stop manufacturing them, find other greener, eco-friendly, human physiology-friendly options, and hopefully gradually start changing those industries. There's been so much work that's been done over time by different groups working to reduce this or that chemical, but there's just so many thousands and thousands of them, and they're so pervasive that there's still more work that needs to be done. And quite frankly, well, thankfully there are those grassroots groups and different lobbying groups and whatnot that are working to try to reduce environmental pollutants and whatnot. So much of that responsibility really falls onto the shoulders, I think, of us, the consumers, to make those decisions, to educate ourselves enough to know, well, am I buying something that has harmful chemicals in it? And if so, can I buy an alternative or maybe not buy that thing in the first place, to try to do my part, so to speak, do all of our parts as individuals to not contribute to the overall problem. Again, if you pulled those 100 people off this, or 100 people off the street and said, hey, are you consciously, trying to pollute the planet, harm other people's health by, purchasing chemicals and whatnot? Say, no, of course not. Of course, I'm not doing that. And yet, there are, certain things that we might be doing day to day that are having those negative impacts. So, the interview with Laura, it's a great interview. We get into a lot of details on these things, and as always with the Optimistic Future podcast, we distill it down to some simple steps that anyone can take. One of the things I really appreciate about Laura is that she comes at things from the ground up and saying that anything that any changes that she's going to ask folks to make, they're going to be changes that are either going to save that person money or at least not cost any money. It's one thing to get up on our high horses and say buy all organic, only buy the green cleaning products, this type of thing. But some people can't afford to do that. Some people don't have access to those things. And while, in my opinion, trying to do that as much as we can, if we can afford it, is a good choice. I mean, I certainly do that in my personal life and professional life here at my clinic. We use all the greenest stuff that we possibly can, but not everybody can do that. So if you're listening to this thinking like, oh, it's going to be one of those, high and mighty, just buy everything, all the expensive stuff at the store, there are simple steps that she recommends. If you don't want to listen to the podcast or you don't have time for that, you can always go to the website, optimisticfuturepodcast.com, and I have those simple steps distilled down there. So save yourself 45 minutes and not listen to us if you don't want to, but if you have the time or the inclination, please do listen to the podcast. So one of the steps that we talk about there, one of those simple steps, and this is something that I've sort of professed for years to my personal life anyways, and certainly to my patients, is just encouraging folks to not use artificially scented products. So that would include perfume, that would include cologne, that would include air fresheners like Febreze, that would include, little car hangy off your rearview mirror, car fresheners, that type of thing. Things that are artificially scented contain a plethora of harmful chemicals, and they don't do anybody any good. If you like the smell, that's wonderful, but there's lots of natural things that smell good. Roast some onions in your kitchen, that smells good. Get some essential oils, smell your laundry after it's hung up on the line after a summer's day. Like, there's plenty of things that smell just great. We don't need perfume, we don't need cologne, we don't need these artificially scented room fresheners, that type of thing. There are harmful chemicals in there that are bad for the environment, bad for us, and it's I'm a big proponent of it's a free country. It's make the decisions for yourself. If you make choices that are maybe going to be deleterious to your own health, so be it. That's your prerogative. But one of the things that really, quite frankly, just gets a bee in my bonnet is that when folks are using these, say perfume, cologne, and whatnot, and they're going out into public places, it's exposing other people to those things too. I'm not saying that it's as bad as, going into a restaurant and starting to smoke per se, but for some people, it is as bad, or maybe worse. People who are have multiple chemical sensitivities, they can have, breathing problems if someone's wearing perfume too close to them. They can get headaches. It can cause a migraine, it can cause a skin outbreak, and cause debilitating fatigue and brain fog. It can be really, really negatively impactful. And while thankfully, at least here in Canada, and I believe most parts of North America, probably other parts of the world, I'm not the most worldly guy, so I can definitely speak to Canada anyways. I've lived here my whole life. Thankfully, we don't have smoking in movie theaters and restaurants and things like that anymore. But in my mind, I think that, or my opinion, I should say, I think that it would be wonderful if we got to the point of saying, like, yeah, scent-free policy everywhere, because again, these chemicals are bad for the person wearing them and bad for the people smelling them as well. And these things, they cling to clothing, like, goodness gracious. I have a teenage son. He went through his phase of putting on Axe body spray and this and that, and he like put it on when he was at school, come home later, it's like, you still smell like these chemicals, like these things linger and linger. The companies are very good at concocting formulas that will cling to your clothing. They're good at what they do, like getting those scents to hang on there. But these scents are really, really not good for us. So just again, a little soapbox there. Just really think that minimizing our, well, quite frankly, I think just flagrantly avoiding the use of any artificially scented products as much as possible, I think, is a really good choice. That's, hand soap, room fresheners, even like laundry detergent, things like that, personal care products. Again, if they're scented with essential oils, I think that's a healthier alternative anyways. Laura mentioned she has maybe some concerns about essential oils maybe not being like perfectly healthy for everyone, but we didn't really have a chance to get into that. So maybe that's a point that's debatable, but, unscented products, I think are really the way to go. And this is one of those tips, one of these simple steps that her and I kind of, well, she had the ideas, I jotted them down. So the simple steps that she was suggesting as an environmental toxins expert, this is one of those examples of doing this. It actually saves a person money. It's like perfume and cologne, they can be very expensive. Room fresheners, they cost a certain amount of money. Stop using them. It doesn't cost anything. It actually ultimately saves money in the grand scheme of things. So anyways, officially stepping off the soapbox here. I would love to get other people's perspectives on this. If you're listening to this saying like, yes, I agree, I couldn't agree more, please post in the comment section. If there's something that I'm missing here, if there's something where, you're saying like, no, this is actually really bad advice, or this is not, global or globally applicable across the board, please post in the comment section. I certainly don't want to live in a sort of oh my goodness, I don't want to just be having my own opinion. An echo chamber, that's the one. I don't want to be in an echo chamber. If other people have differing opinions on this, I'd love to hear it. So please stay tuned for that podcast. It should be dropping in the next few days, and I'll leave it there for now.